So the words we say this morning, hallelujah, Christ is risen. He is risen indeed, hallelujah. These were not the words of the women who went to the tomb. They were also not the words of Peter when he ran afterwards to check out the emptiness of it. In the half-light of morning, the women are at the tomb, and they didn't go there with their spices thinking, maybe he isn't dead. They knew that dead people stayed dead. And the tomb is now empty. Jesus' body is gone. Clearly, they were perplexed, and that seems to me to be kind of a light-hearted word for what really was going on. And then their anxiety turns to outright terror as a couple of angels show up and tell them that they're looking for Jesus in the wrong place. He is risen, they said. Remember, he told you he would rise again. Well, no one in their right mind is going to believe this. Honestly, do we? Would we? They saw their friends take the body down from the cross. Someone they didn't even know offered him the tomb so that they could lay his body there. They knew he was dead. These women are crazy from terror and lack of sleep. Why would anybody accept such a story? They're talking nonsense. It is an idle tale, the disciples say. They can't believe it, and no one else can either. And Peter, who has spent the weekend in utter shame and grief for denying Jesus, he even runs to go double check. And he goes away amazed, but not convinced, because there is no body there. Do you wonder if he was thinking, if he's alive, then I have this horrible conversation coming up with him? How can he not be dead? And what did they do with his body? It would take a real encounter with the risen Jesus for any of them to believe. And that would happen later on this day. But we're jumping the gun a little bit. Because the same is true for us. It might be really hard this morning to recognize that Jesus is alive. He was dead. He was dead. Why do you look for the living among the dead, say the angels. The tomb is empty. He is not here. He is to be found among his grieving friends on the road to Emmaus, tending a fire by the sea, sitting with the homeless, the people who have lost loved ones to COVID, the ones who have cared for the sick and dying. He is feeding the war-torn in Ukraine, and he is here with us today. There is nothing to be found in an empty tomb. What the gospel asks is not, do you believe? It asks, have you encountered the risen Christ? I believe in a lot of things, and to be honest, there are days when I don't have much faith in much of anything, which is honestly okay, because that allows us to grapple with what's going on. It allows us not to just flat out say, yes, it's true, without embracing the struggle that it is to come to that conclusion, to recognize that, and to see it, and to own it, to embrace it. I have encountered the risen Jesus, and that is worth more than absolute belief. And I would guess by the fact that most of you are here, you also have encountered the risen Christ. A couple of us were talking yesterday as we were setting all this up, and I'm not sure how it came up, but the question was asked, have you had people ask you if you are saved? I think we all have. That's like saying, do you believe? When the better question is, have you encountered Jesus? Have you encountered the risen Christ in your life? One asks for something lifeless and dead. It's like asking for your membership card. The other asks for something living and life-giving. It asks for relationship. Very different things. The angel says, remember how he told you. Our faith is not based on an empty tomb or linen cloths or a stone that gets rolled away. It is based on the presence of Jesus in the lives of those he encountered and still does today. There is nothing to be found in an empty tomb. We will never, ever find him there. The women and the other disciples needed to remember that when he had been telling them all these stories, all his life and work with them, all his ministry and teaching and healing and feeding and loving, that's where we know the living Christ exists. We remember all the times that we have been forgiven, all the blessings that have been showered on us throughout our whole lives. And even in our cries, where are you? Because we all have those too. We are remembering something that we once had and we struggle to get back. Remember how he cared for the lost and the lonely. Remember how he fed the hungry. Remember how he loved the children and the widows. Remember how he shares a meal of bread and wine. Remember he told us to do likewise. I believe that's a clue to encounter him. He told us to do likewise. When we do the things he taught us to do, he is there, in us, with us, and through us. On this blessed day, remember, he is not among the dead. Go be with the people you love who are alive, and go be with the people who are alive that need your love, because that is how we will encounter the risen Christ. And that, my friends, is the best part of the story. Alleluia, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed.